For some reason, in 1994, Hollywood decided to invest in baby-related comedies. Maybe the success of Rugrats and Look Who's Talking prompted this, but that year saw the release of two monumentally stupid films centered around babies. One was Junior, directed by Ivan Reitman, in which the main concept is Arnold Schwarzenegger getting pregnant. The other was Baby's Day Out, from the mind of John Hughes, about a baby going on a citywide adventure as a trio of criminals chase after him. Neither of them are particularly funny, nor charming, nor, good. But which is worse? Well, let's take a look. Both of these films seem clearly born out of simple concepts, and that's okay. Most films come from little ideas that grow to form a feature film. However, Junior immediately comes across as cynical, like a bunch of executives at Universal saw the box office grosses on Kindergarten Cop and decided the next logical step would be to have Schwarzenegger give birth to his own offspring, and oh, the hilarity! Baby's Day Out is merely a simple cartoon plot, one previously brought to success in animated shorts, so I can see why the studio greenlit it. Spending $50 million on it was probably not the brightest idea, but I can understand the enthusiasm at 20th Century Fox, especially with its similarities to Home Alone. My biggest problem with Junior is the very storyline is beyond ridiculous. Even with the advances of technology, men cannot get pregnant. Our inner workings make it impossible to do so. If Junior saw itself as a science fiction film, I would give it some leeway. But it's not. It plays the entire thing straight, and the jokes they go with are not that funny. The humor is not even absurdist. It's almost going for kind of George Cukor vibe, but without the wit. This film's idea of humor is putting Arnold Schwarzenegger in a dress and having him perform a series of feminine stereotypes. I guess the filmmakers wanted to play with gender roles and that men can be caregivers and can do things normally considered feminine, but the screenplay lacks that needed dosage of satire and it just falls flat. Baby's Day Out definitely follows the template of a lot of John Hughes scripted films at the time, with a heavy dosage of slapstick and incompetent villains. There's definitely a cartoon influence to this film, but noticing that highlights its shortcomings. The premise of a baby walking through traffic or a construction site or a gorilla cage, blissfully unaware of what's happening around them, is funny in a short cartoon. Around the time this film was released, Animaniacs was tackling that very premise with the Mindy and Button shorts. Except with animation, it's clearly drawings on paper, and everything is exaggerated to the nth degree. In a live-action film, we are watching an actual baby narrowly avoid being hit by cars, and it's horrifying. I'm not laughing, I'm fearing for that child's safety. Those cartoons are also short, so the gag doesn't risk running out of steam. Baby's Day Out has to attach a larger premise onto it and stretch things out, and it gets tiring pretty quickly, especially since the slapstick gags are not the least bit amusing. It also runs on the premise that everyone in New York has a head so far up in the clouds, nobody is noticing a baby crawling down the street or catching a bus ride. There's one scene where he sits down in the middle of a news reporter's story with a crowd surrounding the area, and nobody notices he's there. Again, I could buy this if it was a cartoon. But it's not. There are just some things you cannot translate from animation to live action. This is one of them. There's even a scene where a pair of policemen spot the villains in the park, where they're trying to hide the baby, and somehow they don't find that suspicious. Roger Ebert's infamous idiot plot pretty much describes this entire film. Back to Junior. During Arnold Schwarzenegger's heyday, he would jump between action films and comedies. And while I always found him to be naturally funny in his action roles, his purely comedic performances have always fallen short for me. Jingle All the Way is one of the most obnoxious Christmas films in my opinion, and I never much cared for Kindergarten Cop. With Junior, not only are we forced to believe he's a scientist, he's not even playing a fully dimensional character. Him getting pregnant could have led to some real comedic situations, and instead it's just hijinks. The saddest part of watching Junior is seeing Emma Thompson. Thompson is almost always a delight to watch on screen, but she's saddled with a script with no wit. And the whole time watching her in this, I just wanted Thompson to grab the script out of Ivan Reitman's hands and rewrite the entire thing. This year, she was one of the writers on Bridget Jones's Baby, another comedy about an unexpected parent dealing with the changes brought on by childbirth. And that film was actually funny and charming, unlike Junior. I just liked to imagine, during her breaks, she was writing the screenplay for Sense and Sensibility. So at least, while she was working on this crummy movie, she was putting together a much better one in her trailer. And her and Schwarzenegger have absolutely no chemistry, which dilutes their romance even further. Danny DeVito, meanwhile, is doing his Danny DeVito thing that always made him an enjoyable presence in even the worst films. So, points for him, I guess? I think you can tell I'm struggling to come up with positive things to say about this film. Baby's Day Out also suffers from the fact that babies, unless they're animated and talk like the Rugrats, do not really make compelling film leads. They are limited in what they can do. Sure, they're cute, but that's kind of all baby actors have going for them. It's up to the adult actors to pick up the slack, and the ones in Baby's Day Out are not that much better than the main character. The criminals who kidnap the baby and have to chase after him are nothing more than third-rate versions of the wet bandits from Home Alone. Even with Joe Mantegna and Joe Pantoliano playing two of them, they're directed to do nothing more than act foolish and run and trip into things. And as another example of how horrifying this film is, Mantegna gets his, private parts lit on fire at one point. How is that funny? Oh, and we also have Cynthia Nixon playing a British maid for some reason. Unless she's spying on Mozart, I don't care. So in the end, which is worse? Junior or Baby's Day Out? I'm gonna say Junior. Both are incredibly stupid films, but Baby's Day Out at least had its heart in the right place, as ill-advised as it was. Plus, as a pretty realistic-looking gorilla costume put together by the folks at Industrial Light and Magic. Otherwise, it's just not funny, and the slapstick gags are tired. If this was a 7-minute Warner Brothers cartoon, on the other hand, I could see this working. And at the very least, we got an entertaining Siskel and Ebert review out of it.
Baby's Day Out is your kids, little kids, next best choice.
Well, this is fascinating, Gene, because you've just defended this film on exactly the same grounds that I used for The Shadow. You like the art direction, you like the look, you like the old-fashioned
and other
feel,
things.
You like the tone. Well, I hated this movie more than any other movie on this show, and I'm really surprised at you. You should be ashamed of yourself.
What,
first of all,
for not agreeing with you? I've never been ashamed of that. I've been proud of that.
Okay.
Junior is almost insulting to one's intelligence. I cannot even fathom how this film was made by the same director as Ghostbusters. But the entire thing hinges on the humorous potential of Arnold Schwarzenegger being pregnant. And since that's not a very funny idea to begin with, the whole thing just falls apart right there. So in conclusion, let's just say we were seeing babies being utilized in much better and funnier ways on Nickelodeon around that time. See you next time.